In 1996, Sega AM3 developed the killer track and field arcade game Decathlete for the STV Titan hardware. Soon after, the Sega Saturn home version was released, a perfect port that ran in the system's high-resolution mode at a buttery smooth frame rate. Not only did it look great, but it played pretty good as well. Pick your favorite athlete, compete in events like the 100-meter dash, long jump and javelin throw, and break all the world records you possibly could. Sega, keen on striking while the iron was hot, got AM3 back in the saddle to make a sequel, this time for winter sports like skiing, skating, bobsledding, and even skeleton. That game was Winter Heat, originally released in November of 1997 in Japanese arcades. Like Decathlete, it used a combination of speed and timing to determine your outcome and performance. In February of 1998, the Saturn home version made its way out, and in this episode, we're going to take a look at that, see how it compares to its summer counterpart, and see if it holds up as a worthy successor. Hope you guys enjoy my review of Winter Heat for the Sega Saturn. Sega AM3 knew they had a good thing here, so the structure of Winter Heat is very similar to its forebearer. At the main menu, you get a choice of 4 options to start a game. The 11-event Heat is a basic mode where you play every single event back-to-back regardless of performance. Or in other words, you don't have to qualify for anything. It's mainly about the score. The arcade mode introduces qualifying times and distances that you need to meet in order to keep playing, adding an element of challenge beyond the previous mode. The individual match is basically the previous game's practice mode, only this time you can actually break the world records. Here you can pick any event in any order and play as long as you want. The final mode is Custom Heat, where you can actually build an itinerary exactly how you want it. Want to skip those pesky events you perform badly in? This right here is for you. From there you get 8 choices of athletes. You'll notice some familiar faces from the previous game, as well as 2 new characters that round out the bunch. As before, each specializes in certain events, while a few fall into the all-around category. Gameplay from there takes numerous cues from Decathlete. Speed skiing is all about finger speed, ski jumping relies on a combination of speed and timing, the downhill event relies on jumping and staying on course, skeleton requires finger speed at first, but then switches to steering, braking, and keeping on course while you barrel down the track head first, slalom is almost entirely timing as you negotiate the flags, aerial is an awesome mix of speed, timing, and switching up between the two multiple times as you try and nail the most difficult trick. Speed skating is almost 100% timing as you try and keep the proper speed around the corner so your athlete doesn't slip and fall. The bobsled is very similar to skeleton where steering is your main worry. Snowboarding is similar to the downhill event, but now you must follow the flags in order to not lose time. The cross-country race is a test of timing and endurance. You have to keep up with the pack, but you also must keep your stamina in check for the big push at the end. Short track speed skating is all about positioning and keeping your pace up. In many ways, it's more diverse and offers quite a bit more in regards to variety in the events than its predecessor. If you enjoyed the previous game, you should really enjoy this one as well.
I don't believe it!
Decathlete was, in my opinion, one of the best looking games the Saturn ever produced. The texture work was great, and it ran as smooth as you could have wanted. Winter Heat, on the other hand, is not quite as attractive in some respects. It runs at a lower resolution and is 30 frames per second, 2 areas where Decathlete reigns supreme. But let's be clear, the engine on display here is far more dynamic with a lot more going on. Decathlete was confined to an arena where just the immediate surroundings needed consideration. Winter Heat has a much larger environment to render, where polygons must be used for convincing effect. Decathlete could just render the majority of the screen with VDP2, and it was done. With that in mind, Winter Heat is actually a great looking title for the era. Aside from its steady performance, it also has great touches like reflections on the ice, more athletes on the screen at once, a decent polygon draw distance, and an overall impressive scale to the environment. There are a few blemishes like texture and geometry glitching in some of the close-ups, but that sort of thing tended to be common for the era. Overall, what it lacks in the original game's resolution and frame rate, it more than makes up for in the bigger and better areas you compete in. Sega AM3 clearly had a good hold on the Saturn's architecture and knew how to squeeze some very decent performance out of it.
On your mark. Set.
Winter Heat's audio presentation is basically mainly what you'd expect from a sporting event of this nature. It's crowd noises and the sound of skis and skates meeting the snow and ice. There are few events with actual music, but what's there is fitting and sounds good. Let's have a listen to a quick example. Winter Heat is a great extension of the work started in Decathlete. By mixing up the button mashing with loads of timing and steering elements, this comes off as so much better to similar games before it. You need some real skill in this one to dominate, and it will take time to get good. Turbo controllers are almost worthless in most of the events, so you'll need to put in the work just like everybody else. Sega also seemed to have heard my pleas, because Winter Heat is now a 4-player game with the 6-player adapter, making it perfect for parties and family night. There is a great sense of competition as you fight your way to the head of the pack in some of these events. As before, the record-keeping system saves your performance, so breaking those times and distances is as fun as ever. Weaknesses are few, but I do have a couple of gripes. There are events that are a tad too similar to one another for their own good. While they all have their differences, events like bobsledding and skeleton feel a little too close for comfort. There is also an annoying lack of consideration for the load times in the individual match. Instead of giving you the option to do another event, it sends you back to the event selection screen, forcing multiple loading screens to get there. This wasn't an issue in Decathlete because each event had 3 chances, but in individual match here, you get but a single go. Outside of that nitpicking, I really don't have much bad to say about Winter Heat. It's a worthy sequel with more events, more gameplay, some hidden unlockables, and a great setting. Sega's arcade expertise shines through once again. I've always been a big fan of these kinds of games. I love the pick up and play nature they specialize in. Winter Heat captures nearly everything I enjoyed about Decathlete while offering support for even more players to join in. That's no small thing, because these kinds of games really excel when you have friends or family around. It's true those of you that appreciated the high-res 60 frames per second of the first will be a touch disappointed here, but I think the new engine does what it does well, considering how much more it actually has to render. It's far from an ugly game. As with Decathlete, if you are looking for other ways to play this, the Sega Aegis 2500 release for the PlayStation 2 is still an option. It's not a one-to-one port, but it's still a decent time. I'll always prefer these games in their original Saturn forms, however. I think they both look great, I love the way they play, and I never seem to get tired of them. That's pretty much all you can ask from an arcade title, and it's one of the reasons why I enjoyed my Saturn so much back then. While I appreciated the deeper and more involved games that were coming out, I never wanted to see these simpler titles disappear. I didn't always have hours to devote to a game in a single setting, so being able to drop 10 or 15 minutes here and there was greatly appreciated. Good arcade games continue to provide me that very same level of fun even today, and it's Sega that did it best. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.